Well, there's a man we're going to talk about later on called William Marshall, who's the first Earl of Pembrokeshire that I want to talk about because he's directly relevant to the kind of like theme of this entire series. But William the Conqueror, I take your point, Sprite. It might just be mythologizing, it might just be like inaccurate accounts, but like for a man of his age to die at 60 in battle, he must have been doing pretty well, I would think.
Oh yeah, I'm not denying he's doing well, but like he wouldn't necessarily have been the virulent horse you're implying he was.
Briefly cutting across with this game's plot, it was the snake himself who tricked your father into the trap that cost him his life.
What a dick the snake is.
Well, he's not the one who actually killed him, though. We'll figure that one out as the game goes on.
Could it be the wolf by any chance?
I don't know what you're talking about. So this is a very different one. The snake's men are halfway through building a castle in the next county. Chase the few guards he has placed there, then finish the construction yourself. The snake will undoubtedly try to retake the castle, so defend it well. Our goals are to achieve a population of 25 and bless 75% of them. We're about to learn about Christianity. Which is a whole different load of conversation we can open up now of early medieval Christianity.
Oh, I've got so much to say about that. I've not even finished telling you about William the Conqueror in 1066.
You've got time, don't worry. This is quite a long bit. It's not difficult.
Just
it's
so
just
we're
a very
clear,
long one.
I don't think you can call this early Christianity. This is definitely mid-Christianity.
Okay, yes, not in 1150 that we are now, apparently, yes.
No, definitely. I mean, like 100 years.
The fact it's been 100 years and it's still us is evidence for the fact that this game is bullshit when it comes to timing.
You're just immortal. Conor MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod.
Yeah.
Right, we're getting
we'll
so
be
far
God Emperor of Britain soon.
Right, we're getting so far off topic. Whilst the Doctor is crushing the last pockets of resistance, hopefully in this castle, I'm going to finish on William the Conqueror and tell you how 1066 ends up, and therefore how the rest of British, European, world history therefore has to go after that point. So, William is the Duke of Normandy, which, as we discussed earlier on, is a big deal because it means that he's still the Duke of Normandy after he inevitably conquers England, and that draws England and France very inexorably into conflict with one another. But as the Duke of Normandy, as the largest and most powerful duchy in France, he technically has more military might than the King of England. Now, William is fascinating because he's descended from like the Normans, who are in effect Viking exiles who have set up their own duchy within the Kingdom of France. So William's ancestor is a guy called Rollo. If you've seen
like the chocolate.
Actually, not the chocolate. Well, also the chocolate. But if you've seen the Amazon show Vikings, Ragnar Lothbrok's brother is called Rollo in that show, which is deeply historically inaccurate. But there is actually a Viking warlord called Rollo who raids the Kingdom of France so successfully and so consistently that the King of France tells him, you know what, fuck it, have the Duchy of Normandy, and if you hold it and prevent further Viking incursions into my territory, I will name you Duke of Normandy. So, it's fascinating. So Rollo, I think it's like 4 or 5 generations prior to William the Conqueror, but his ancestors are absolutely fighting Vikings who are so good at fighting, the King of France says, nah, just be part of the nation of France. Not that the nation of France.
Be French.
Simply be French. And like all that happens is that like his descendants develop French military tactics, they like use French military equipment, they speak French, they weave tapestries, they listen to French music, they become to all intents and purposes. Oh, rabbits?
Yeah, they eat my crops. But don't worry, we have archers for this problem.
Anyway, to all intents and purposes, like these Vikings settle in northern France, become Frankified, and that is the line of like historical, I suppose, ancestry that William the Conqueror comes from. He is, to all intents and purposes, a Frankified Viking, which is kind of rad. Anyway, so this is where William the Conqueror comes from, and in 1066 he also concocts a possibly false claim that Edward the Confessor, the previous King of England, promised on his deathbed, in a very similar claim to what Harold Hardrada is making, that he would make William the Conqueror, he's not called the Conqueror yet because he hasn't conquered anything, but he will make William Duke of Normandy the King of England when Edward the Confessor dies. So Edward the Confessor dies, Harold Godwinson defies these supposed promises that Edward the Confessor has made and crowns himself King of England against one Viking warlord and one Franco, like Viking warlord.
Continue.
So, this is the situation in 1066. These are the three claimants: William, the would-be conqueror,
Wolf. Bullshit.
Harold Hardrada, and Harold Godwinson, the Saxon King of England. So Harold Hardrada sails across the North Sea. He picks up a bunch of bizarre Scottish Vikings who are living in the Orkney and Shetland Islands, and with a host of about 9,000 men, he lands in York. He quickly takes York, and he's about to sweep across what seemingly is a weak and divided England. However, Harold Godwinson forces this incredible 3-day march where he supposedly he hears that Harold Hardrada, the Viking claimant to the throne, has landed in York, which is hundreds of miles away from London.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He's incredibly, the sources tell us this, it may be disputed, but he sets out from London with 500 men, and by the time he arrives in Yorkshire, he has 10,000. So he marches basically for 3 days, even with modern military equipment and modern discipline and supplies, to make it there in 3 days is fundamentally impossible. Did he do this? We don't know. It could just be an incredible feat of military logistics. We don't have enough information. But supposedly, over the course of 3 days, he marches many hundreds of miles and picks up somewhere in the region of 9,500 men. So he gets there, he surprises Harold Hardrada, whose men have come to accept the surrender of the township of York. Most of them aren't wearing their armour. Many of them don't even have their best weapons with them because they're only there to line up and accept the surrender of the town. And there's a narrow bridge that separates the Saxon army under Godwinson versus the Viking army, which is led by Hardrada. Now, Godwinson's men press the attack across the bridge. Hardrada's men fall back, and there's a wonderful story about a single Viking warrior who
holding the bridge. Yes, I've heard that
Yeah!
one. Again, possibly from you. Most likely from you, in fact.
I don't think I've actually told you this, Doctor, but it's an incredible story, and it's probably true because it's recorded.
I think you haven't told me it directly, but I believe you've mentioned it on Facebook, and I've seen it there.
Oh, I did post on Facebook with this. I'm not going to post my Facebook on the channel because sorry guys, don't want you to know my real name. But anyway, there's a wonderful story of how the Saxons press across this narrow bridge to get at the Vikings, basically. But a single Viking berserker holds the bridge, and allegedly he holds the bridge for an hour solid. He kills 40 Saxons, and which probably not true, but it gets to the point where nobody will go onto the bridge to fight him because they're too afraid of him, which is so fucking cool.
Life goals.
It gets to the point that the only way to get rid of this guy, so the Saxons build a boat and they sail it underneath the bridge and spear him from below because not a single Saxon warrior is brave enough to fight him.
Also, you may notice, just to briefly intrude, the mad shit I've done here because I've taken
That's staircase!
Yeah. I've taken advantage of some bullshit that you can do in this game where if you have a wall which is high enough, you can just do this. So it's a nice little shortcut for my farmers to get into the thing, and when the enemy attacks, I will just take out one chunk of it and render it useless as a way into the castle. Absolutely. It's a bit of a Jeb move, but I'm okay with it.
Absolutely ingenious, Doctor.
Don't encourage him.
To get back to the story of 1066, which I promise viewership I'm very close to finishing, and I do apologise for how long it's taking.
No, we've got time.
I'm invested now, and this is the story of the game that we're actually playing. So, where was I? So, eventually the Saxons kill this guy on the bridge. This is actually probably true because the only record we have of this is in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. So literally, the people who were fighting him wrote this down, which implies that this is not propaganda propagated by Harold Hardrada.
No, I must add, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle is one of the only sources for a lot of stuff for a good couple of 100 years, so...
Yeah,
it's not super reliable, it's just one of very few sources that has actually survived pretty well and is not terrible.
Also, I see your point, but I point you to that episode in Firefly where Jane's describing the attacker and he's like, he looked bigger when I couldn't see him.
Yeah, to be fair, this could be a Saxon excuse for why they don't take the bridge faster, right? I mean, it could just be propagandic nonsense, but I want to believe it's true.
That's fair.
The really sad thing, we don't even know the name of the man that held the bridge for an hour, allegedly killing 40
Obviously,
Saxons.
it was Hodor.
Who knows? It may have well have been.
No, it's more likely to have been, Johnson or something
Harold.
like that. Or...
Harold
Johnson.
Why you gotta piss on my parade?
Anyway, eventually what happens is the Saxons attain the bridge, The Vikings summon reinforcements. The reinforcements are running in armor from the longships that are miles and miles away to make it to this battlefield. They don't make it in time. By the time they arrive, the warrior king Harald Hardrada has been killed in battle. So supposedly he's shot in the head with an arrow. There's a wonderful account of him again in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, swinging his sword
A lot of
two-handed.
people shot in the head with arrows around 1066 as well.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that in a
It's a completely
moment.
valid method of removing yourself of pesky kings, UK.
It is, or it could be a trope, right? I mean, it could be like, oh, the noble. If he'd only made it to battle, he
Really,
would have
a small
triumphed.
force of the snake's troops are attacking. 2 archers and 2 macemen.
Yeah, it's a shame. Anyway, so Harald Hardrada, he's shot in the head by an arrow. He falls down dead. It's a real shame because, like, if you were banking on anybody to become the King of England in 1066, you might back the Viking warlord who's had 30 years of combat experience and who has 9,000 battle-hardened Vikings with him to take the kingdom. It's a weird quirk of history that, like, England ends up being conquered by
fuck off my
a
stairs,
French warlord versus what is very obviously a Viking warlord, which is a bit. There's a whole alternative version of British history where, like, it's not William the Conqueror who seizes England in 1066, it's Harald Hardrada.
Danelaw 2.0 is what it is.
Yeah, but, like, think how different world history is if a Viking king
Danelaw
conquers
2,
England in
Viking
1066.
Bugaloo.
Somebody's got to make a movie out of this because, like, it's honestly fascinating that, like, against all the odds, Harold Godwinson, the Saxon King of England, defeats Harald Hardrada at Stamford Bridge, which is almost unthinkable given that, like, he's outnumbered, he's outmaneuvered, but pulls off this incredible march and eventually kills him.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's just also just a legitimately better commander, well, fighter at least, not commander.
Well, you say that, but again, like, Harold Godwinson doesn't have the military credentials that Hardrada does, who's been fighting since, like, he was a boy, effectively. He doesn't have the same kind of, like, warriors that Hardrada does. Hardrada's got, like, Norwegian veterans who've been fighting incessantly against the King of Sweden for basically 20 years, and you think, how does this happen? But yet it does. Anyway, what happens almost immediately after the Battle of Stamford Bridge is that William the Conqueror lands his army at Hastings, and Harold Godwinson's got to round up as many men as he can who are still hanging around in Yorkshire and march them again in a forced march to repel William's landing at Hastings. He turns up, despite the fact that the Saxons actually have horsemen. They don't seem to have used them in the battle at Hastings. It's unclear whether the Saxons had enough saddle technology to actually use horsemen effectively in combat. Anyway, he fights a very risky, large-scale battle at Hastings against William the Conqueror. And again, against all odds, despite the fact that supposedly he has more numbers, supposedly his army is battle-hardened, having just defeated Harald Hardrada, he loses against William the Conqueror, who gains a toehold in England. William is crowned King of England in December 25th, on Christmas Day, 1066, and spends the next decade sweeping across England, eventually making himself, in truth, the King of England.
Yeah, did I send you
and
once
therefore-
the map of William the Conqueror's route through, like, southern England? Put it this way,
it takes him a
our route
decade.
we've taken in this campaign so far has been much more linear. He basically, like, lands in Hastings, goes all the way around to Devon, back all the way around to East Anglia, and then kind of circles to London that way, because turns out approaching London from the south is basically impossible because the Thames is hard to cross.
Yeah, there's also like a massive cultural divide. So, like, William is a Norman. He speaks French, right? He is culturally worlds apart from most of the people that are living in England. Whereas Harold Hardrada is a Norseman. Like, he is, to all intents and purposes, there's a bear on the staircase!
Yeah. Don't think too hard about it.
Jesus! Anyway, Harold Hardrada is a Norseman, and, like, somewhat weirdly, a lot of people living in the north of England have Norse heritage from, like, a
That's basically
situation
where
called the
Danelaw
Dane.
was, yeah.
Yeah, like, a bunch of Vikings have settled there over, like, many centuries. So
Doctor,
there are
you
a
didn't get rid
whole
of the stairs.
Yeah, I know, I wasn't fast enough.
there are a whole heap of people in the north of England who are very sympathetic to Harold Hardrada's cause and would genuinely have supported his kingship because they're pissed off with the Saxons and because, like, they are basically half Viking themselves. So William the Conqueror, when he eventually triumphs, has got to spend a decade subjugating and bringing England into the fold. And he eventually dies of wounds sustained in battle at the age of, like, 60. Which, as we've talked about, kind
Pretty
of
wild,
incredible
yeah.
for a man of his age. The other, like, weirdly touching thing about him, so like, he's a brutal warlord, like, especially in the north of England, where the Norse contingent of England is most concentrated. He enacts a brutal campaign of, like, suppression.
Yeah.
He burns villages, he kills women and children, he does an
I mean,
awful lot of
that is what you would
brutal
expect
things.
when you have someone who claims a contested throne. Your first move should realistically be to quash all other potential complainants.
Yeah, not least of all because Harald Hardrada's son, Magnus, who I think is like 16 at the time of 1066, retreats to Norway, and William must be thinking, like, at any point this guy could come back with an equally sized army as the
you gotta
one...
nip that shit in the bud.
Yeah, he's like, so I don't want him to come into, like, what is basically fertile land for rival kingship, where if he lands in York, there's a whole bunch of, like, Norse Englishmen, Anglo-Danes, basically, who will support him. No, we're gonna kill all those people. So it's estimated that, like, at a time when England's population was not great, so maximally the population of London at this time was maybe like 50,000, William the Conqueror may have killed as many as 200,000 people in the north of England.
Was London still, like, the capital at that point, though?
No.
Yeah, because, like, London as a thing is surprisingly recent, I know.
No, it was the base for the Romans, but then it was kind of, like, unused
Well, it
by
was
the
the southern
Saxons.
base of the Romans. York was their northern base, and it was just as big. Fucking Leicester was a huge base for the Romans.
Yeah, but even talk about it, like, Jorvik is a Viking settlement.
Yeah.
But like, regardless, like as a benchmark for the size of the population of England, imagine you've got 50,000 people in London. If William the Conqueror lowballing it, again, you can never be sure of numbers because it's 1066. Sources aren't great, but like lowballing it, if he kills 200,000 people in the north of England, that's a huge.
Oh yeah, that's Highland Clearance's level of
genocide.
Yeah, genocide. Fuck it. Yep, let's lock that in. Yeah.
But it secures his kingship. Yeah. The weird thing about William the Conqueror that's always struck with me is that apparently, like, once he gets married, he is faithful to his queen, which is exceedingly rare.
Please tell me that was Matilda.
No, she was late.
Earlier, I think.
Earlier. Later. So the Empress Matilda, I think, is a... Oh, I'm getting some crackly noise.
Yeah, it's because the sprite keeps hitting a mic.
I didn't hit it, though.
That's fine.
No, don't move it.
For God's sake.
Unfortunately, the Empress Matilda is about 70, 80 years later. Empress Matilda and Queen Stephen are the people that Henry II, the man we spoke about earlier in the podcast, will eventually seize the Kingdom of England from. But anyway, like, he's apparently, despite the fact that he's a brutal warlord, incredibly effective military leader, apparently even within his own lifetime, he's not especially tall, but he's just broad. He's broad as fuck. Like, all the contemporary sources are like, this guy's got massive shoulders. It's like, this is a guy who can swing a sword and really swing a fucking sword. But like, once he get married, he was entirely faithful to his queen. Like, he has no bastards, he has no like illegitimate offspring.
Oh shit!
This is a guy who was just like very loyal to his
These
queen.
pricks here are engineers, which means they will try and build siege equipment. So I'm going to send some spearmen out to try and deal with them sooner rather than later. We're going to get shot at a bit, but that's fine. We'll engage these archers and move past. I mostly just want to stop these engineers from getting a foothold. They've got macemen here, who are quite fast and hard.
I'm nowhere near it.
I know, it's just having a bit of problems, that mic's problematic.
Do macemen just trump spearmen?
Yeah, basically, they are faster and more powerful. The trade-off is they're slightly harder to produce. But yeah, they are...
I see.
You can see how fast they're mincing through those rocks.
Oh my days. Why would they kill the cows?
Stops me from getting stoned.
Ah, okay. Again, this is an economic battle as much as anything
absolutely.
Else.
Right, hang on a second.
Anyway, that is basically my it's my comprehensive account of the political situation in 1066. Welcome back to the show, viewership. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
Yeah, nice. That was pretty good.
Yeah,
in the meantime, as you can see, I've been defending stuff fine here. We have got the population we need, and we have nearly got the blessed level we need. I built 2 churches, need to build an additional one. Churches also need stone, but as you will notice, they bless the population, and the proportion of the population blessed, every 25% of the population blessed gives you a +1 bonus to popularity.
Do you have a queen or like somebody a robe?
Yes, there's a lady. Hence why people now say to me, "Congratulations on your new bride, my lord."
Is she the one who brought all the alcohol?
Yes. Yeah, you might
Much
notice
like
I pointed
Christ
out to the
himself.
sprite because you were talking at the time, which is what I hired you for. But there was a thing like when two people get married at the chapel, it gives a vow for them, and the vow for me and my lady wife, I think, was she brought the ale to the wedding or something like that.
I messaged the doctor saying that sounds like good vows to me.
Tell us in the comments, viewerships. Like, we are not a military history podcast, although like we're kind of devolving into one.
I would say
Sorry,
evolving, frankly.
Yeah.
What's all this D nonsense?
Well, like you tell us in the commentary, viewership, because like we're not going to do the whole game in one night, and like I've got a lot more in the tank. So like if you tell us you'd rather just more gameplay stuff, I'll dial it back in the next couple of
This is
episodes.
the thing, like the
but,
gameplay is, it's not slow, but it is methodical. Like I don't need to
Yeah.
talk a lot about what I'm doing. I can literally come back in every 15-20 minutes and just say what I've been up to, and a lot of the time it will be visually clear. Like here, I'm just trying to get our population blessed that much. The blessing is a weird thing. Every chapel provides a priest, and the priest goes around and physically blesses your workers, and the blessing only lasts a slight while. You need to literally have a certain population having been physically interacted with the priest.
Oh no.
So, oh good lord, yeah. So the more chapels,
physically interactive.
more chapels you build means you have more priests kicking around, which means
More children be afraid.
Yes.
To be fair, like this is actually very. Oh, I really like this. It's very historically accurate as well because like the spread of Christianity helps build nation states. And like that's, I don't feel great about Christianity in medieval Europe or anywhere, but like it does really help to tie a government together.
Yeah.
Do you know why?
One of the reasons. Tell me,
It
Sprite.
helps to entrench the whole thing of well, it complements the whole feudalism thing, being like it's a lord, it's a thing,
Divine
it's
right
this,
to rule,
divine
yeah.
right to rule. It also makes it really handy because every man has a nice servant at home, which is the woman.
Yeah.
There's a very interesting thing about the extent to which Christianity spread through women in the home as well.
Yeah, there was a whole thing about glorifying motherhood. The most
that's a
important thing
new
was to be a
background.
mother. Yeah, well, yeah, it is.
Not seen that before.
Yeah.
The most important thing was to be a
to-
mother.
to-
If you're a mother, you're in the thing of God, etc., etc. And that was then appealing to women, and they taught that to their children. And their children were
Yeah.
taught, oh, as a man, I get to rule everything.
Like there's a big argument that it spreads over paganism because it can spread in the home.
So can
Right,
paganism.
yep.
Just-
Yes, but a lot of paganism stuff was rooted in, warrior cults or the rituals that the men did. It spreads.
And the women.
Yeah, but like there are very historical accounts. Like even within the lifetime of Harald Hardrada, the man we just spoke about, like there's a Byzantine general alive contemporaneously with
Word
with
with him.
Harald Hardrada. Yeah, who talks about the concept of shield maidens,
Yeah.
like Norse women who would, not many of them, like they were very small in number, but like they did exist. That there were women who fought on the front lines with shields, with spears, like any other Viking Norse warrior. But like that kind of dies out with Christianity.
Yeah.
Right, that was a fairly effective mission, so we will wrap it up there. Thank you very much for watching. I've been the Doctor.
I've been the sprite.
I have been the Bard, telling you the tale of 1066, and we hope you will continue to like, share, and subscribe the way Harald Hardrada and William the Conqueror wanted you to. Farewell, and good night, viewership.
Good day.
Good night.